Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Twister, and today I'm back with another GTA Online video. Now, I did say I wanted to go into the Stunt Race Creator to give you guys some of my best tips when it comes to making stunt races and making use of all the features available in the Stunt Race Creator. So this is my race that I've made, Maze Bank Loop. I'm sure you guys will have seen the video on it. When I actually uploaded it, Rockstar Games actually retweeted it on Twitter, which was really unexpected. I was pretty surprised by that, and it was pretty awesome. So if any of you guys did go to check out that video from Rockstar's retweet, welcome. A lot of you guys really seemed to enjoy that race and leave positive feedback on it, which was really cool. So I wanted to do this video to sort of help you guys out, give you a bit of a head start in the Stunt Race Creator, and hopefully you guys will learn some useful information and pick up some stuff that you weren't necessarily aware of. So we will get straight into it. This is Maze Bank Loop. I'll just be using this as kind of an example to go over some of the stuff. So when you first go into the race creator, you've got race details and you can choose all kinds of stuff. But for the sake of creating it, what you want to do is you want to set the number of laps to 1. Now, even though the default of mine is 2, that's what I changed it to at the end. When you're actually creating it, you want to set it to 1 lap, because every time you go ahead and test the race, you only have to complete 1 lap to test it. So that's why you set it to 1 lap, because you don't really need to do more than 1 lap. You only need to complete 1 lap to test it to know everything's fine. But if you set the race details to 2, 3, 4 laps, every time you want to test it, you'll have to complete multiple laps, even though you really only need to do 1 to make sure that everything's fine. So that's why you want to set it to 1 lap. That just makes the testing phase of it a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, because you're going to spend a lot of time testing your race every time you change something, edit something. So setting it to 1 lap will make things go a lot quicker. And then when you've finally finished everything and you think you've got everything right, you're about to publish it, that's when you change the number of laps back to 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever you want it to be. But just for while you're creating it, make sure you set it to 1. Next up, to go over a few of the basic features that you're really going to want to make the most of in the Stunt Race Creator. First up is snapping. This is really helpful to allow you guys to get a basic quick layout, just to form it really quickly. You can go ahead and snap together a load of these props and then change them while you're actually in the snap feature. And you can quickly form like some basic turns, a basic layout. And obviously that's a really quick way and efficient way of forming stuff like tubes, as you can see, the roads. And also once you're about to snap the props together, like the roads for example, you can hold L1 or R1 on PS4 and LB or RB on Xbox One, and that will sort of rotate it upwards or downwards. So just to give you guys an example over here, if I want to snap this, I can hold R1 to raise it, L1 to lower it, and obviously that's something you really want to take advantage of. So I'll just quickly delete these. So snapping these tracks together is obviously a quick way of forming a layout for your stunt race. But if there's some things that you don't really want to snap together, so for example, you can see these circular platforms. I'll just quickly switch to these. Now for these, you can't really necessarily snap these to the sides of the track, so you need to really play around with these rotation tools, you know, pitch, roll, and yaw. You really need to mess around with these, and to get these perfect on these sides of the tracks, I actually needed to go into advanced options and override the rotation, so you can like finally adjust the rotation of it to get it perfect on the side of the tracks. And also you can do the same with position to basically just get it really perfect. So you can fast adjust it and then slightly move it around left, right, up and down, and that should help you guys get precise positioning of props that you don't necessarily want to snap, but you really want to make sure they're positioned correctly. So that will help you guys out for sure. A lot of the features are self-explanatory, and you will need to play around with these yourself in the creator to get a feel for them and to get things placed down exactly where you want them. Now the next thing, this is to do with the jumps, which are pretty important. For the big jumps, you need to make sure you've got a large area covered as sort of like a landing zone. That means that slower cars that may not be carrying as much speed through this tube section will land around here. The faster cars will land, you know, further up, and you just need to make sure that no one's going to mess up this jump, because there's a lot of variables to consider, you know, speed of the car, the angle at which they hit the ramp. So for example, you don't want someone slightly going off to the left and then ending up down here and there be no platform for them to land on. So having this large area covered as a landing zone just makes sure that no one's screwing up when they didn't really necessarily do anything wrong, like overshooting it by going too fast. So there you go, covering a large distance as a landing zone is definitely something you're going to want to make sure you include for these jumps. And the bigger the jump, the bigger the landing zone should be. And that all comes down to testing. You need to get a rough idea of where a non-custom car will land, which is what you'll be able to tell for when you're testing. And then you also need to consider a faster car. A custom car will obviously have a lot more speed, they'll get a lot more distance, and they also need to have a equally large area to land on. So that should help you guys out when making up some large jumps. Now another thing to consider is checkpoint placement. The checkpoint placement is really, really important. So again, when it comes to jumps, you need to make sure that the checkpoints are placed as far forward as possible. So I'm going to show you guys an example of what I mean. Now coming up to this jump on the left hand side, ignore this checkpoint in here. I'll come on to circular checkpoints in a second. When you're actually going through this tube section and hitting this jump and you're actually testing it to see exactly where you land, so as you can see I land about here. There's no point putting a checkpoint here just because that's where I've landed from testing it. You want to make sure you put the checkpoints as far forward as possible, because obviously faster cars will get more distance on that jump, they'll go further, and the last thing you want in a stunt race is for people to fly over the checkpoints. And this was a issue in a couple of the Rockstar races. Some of the checkpoints weren't placed as far forward as they could have been placed, so a lot of the times you were flying over the checkpoints and it wasn't necessarily your fault. You're just hitting the jump with as much speed as you can, because that's obviously what you want to do in the race. You want to be going as fast as possible. So placing the checkpoints further forward is definitely going to make sure that people aren't flying over the checkpoints. And another thing that I briefly mentioned just then is the circular checkpoint. So when you're in the tubes and when you're placing down checkpoints, I'll just go to the checkpoint placement option. Here we go. You've got two options for style. You've got regular, which is the normal checkpoint as you can see here, and then you've got the circular option. So when you're placing checkpoints in the tubes, you always want to make sure you're putting down a circular checkpoint, and that's because I've talked about this in previous videos. It's usually always beneficial to drive up the sides of the tubes to carry a lot more speed when coming back down. And if you've got a circular checkpoint in the tube, that means no matter where the player is in the tube, they'll always hit the checkpoint. So whether they're driving on the bottom of it, they're driving up the sides, they'll always hit the checkpoint, as opposed to not hitting a regular checkpoint if it's here and if they're driving up the side. So again, always make sure you're using circular checkpoints in the tubes. And finally, another tip on checkpoint placement is actually how to insert checkpoints between existing checkpoints. And this is something I didn't know until I'd already finished placing down the checkpoints, and it's something that isn't really obvious. It doesn't tell you in the actual creator itself, but if you actually hover over the blue line where you can see in between checkpoints, and that's how you actually insert a checkpoint between existing checkpoints. That's something I didn't know about, which I really wish I did, and that'll help you guys out in case you realize that you've got two checkpoints a little too far apart and you want to break it up by having a checkpoint in between. You can do that by inserting a checkpoint in between 2 points. Now the next tip is to do with the speed boost. So when selecting the different kind of speed boost, you've got a speed boost option in the tubes. Here we go. That's what I've actually used in this section here, and you can actually change the intensity of the speed boost. You can have it like ultra strong, so you'll get a lot more speed from the speed boost, or you can have it weak and sort of different levels in between. And that's something you really want to experiment with. So on this jump here, on this tube section, I've got quite a few speed boosts going up it to make sure you've got enough speed to hit this jump and land on this section. And this took quite a lot of testing, and I was changing the number of speed boosts, I was changing the intensity of these speed boosts to make sure that this jump was absolutely perfect, so that fast cars would have enough speed but not go too fast from the speed boost and land around here, and also that the non-custom cars, which are going typically a bit slower, would still get just the right amount of speed boosts from this section and land on this landing zone about here. Now my next tip for you guys, this is something sort of like a personal preference of mine, and that's to use some decorative props to make parts of the stunt races a little nicer to look at, a little bit more interesting. It's definitely not the most important part of a stunt race, so don't go wasting loads of props to have loads of signs and loads of trees on the sides. But just if you've got a few props spare, especially since a lot of these raised tracks, they can look a little bare. It can sometimes look like there's not much going on. It can sometimes be hard to sort of differentiate different parts of the track from each other. So I've used different colours, I've used these decorative sign props, and I've used some trees, something really random that you wouldn't really expect, but it just makes it a little bit nicer. That's in my opinion. You don't really have to do this, but that's something that I like to do. I've placed these sort of circular targets with some signs and some trees. I've done the same down here. I've done it again down here. I've also put this tube to sort of act like a tunnel. Didn't really have to do that. It doesn't really affect the way the race plays at all, but it's just some sort of decoration you can do to make things look a little bit nicer, and that's really what I like about this part. If I didn't have the goals and the football, it would just look like a normal plain landing zone that in my opinion is a little boring, but adding this extra detail, it turns it into a football pitch, which if someone just wants to stop and have a game of football in the middle of the race, they can do that, and I think it's just making the race a little bit nicer. Alright, so the next tip I have, this involves something that quickly became really annoying. So when you've got these raised platforms, if you start deleting stuff or you want to change stuff, so say for example I deleted this one and I wanted to change it to a bend, often when you deleted it, the prop will just teleport to the bottom of the map, and it just takes ages to change the height of it to get it all the way up to where you were working before. So what you can basically do, I'll just snap it back to the bottom basically to show you guys what I mean. Just hover over the platforms that you were working with and then slightly raise it up with the left stick, and then there you go, it's back to where it should be. So that just saves you the hassle of trying to move it all the way up. You can quickly just hover over the platforms that you're on and then raise it up a bit, and then there you go, you can get back to snapping these together. And again, that should just make it a lot easier. It's something I didn't figure out straight away, and it's something that really bugged me for quite a while, so hopefully that will help you guys out. And finally, my last tip for you guys, this is something I have mentioned a little bit of, and when it comes to testing, you can actually test the parts as you go along. All you need to do is select a part of the track where there's not much going on, and you can switch camera, and on PS4 that's the touchpad. I think on Xbox it's probably the back button, so select the option and there you go, it'll switch into sort of the driving mode, so you can have a little play around with the track without actually going into the test option and just test things as you go along. So I can check out this jump, make sure it's decent distance, make sure that the checkpoint is where I need it to be, and that should just help you guys as you go along. Not necessarily once you've finished the whole race, you can, you know, go into the actual test race option, but once you're piecing it together, doing section by section, just making sure it works as you go along. So this way of testing out jumps and different sections as you go along will help you guys get an idea of where you need to place props to make things, you know, stuff like jumps a little easier, a little more accurate. But it definitely doesn't stop there. Now, the only thing you can do in the creator is test things out with a stock car. This is a stock RE7B, and obviously it's a lot slower than a custom one, so you need to take into account how things will work out when people are driving a custom car, and it's pretty hard to do that without actually driving one. So you'll need to test it out in a stock car, make sure it works in a stock car, and then publish it or save it, and then actually play it yourself with a custom car to make sure that everything works as well in a custom car. So yeah, make sure you also test it with custom cars, and if you've got other people as well that will use different custom cars, to make sure that all the cars available, say in the supercars class, can make all the jumps. And also you can try and get some feedback off other people as well to see if there's something that needs changing, because obviously you've got the great advantage of testing it out when you basically know everything about the track, but for someone who's doing it for the first time, they may pick up on other stuff. You know, something that may seem obvious to you isn't as obvious to other people when trying out a race for the first time. So there we go, those are my 10 tips for the Stunt Race Creator, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys have found these tips really useful when it comes to the Stunt Race Creator. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you leave it a like rating, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I will link this race down in the description. I probably won't save this version of it because I've messed with a couple of stuff, but I will link it down in the description. It is slightly updated from a previous video. I've changed that wall ride section slightly, I've changed different parts, tweaked it very slightly, but it's the same track overall. It is only on PS4, so I'll add the social club link down in the description. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video, and I'll hopefully see you all in my next one. See you later, guys.